Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's get started. Jax and Jack Morgan stood at the kitchen counter, a warm cup of coffee in his hand and a grin on his face. The Atlanta morning sun poured through the window, making Alyssa's engagement ring sparkle as she moved around the kitchen. Only 3 more weeks, Jack said, his voice filled with excitement. Alyssa turned, her blonde hair swaying, meeting his gaze. I can't believe it's almost here, she responded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jax didn't notice the subtle tension in her stance as he gulped down his coffee. His mind was already racing ahead with thoughts of the day. Work on a major project and last-minute wedding plans were keeping him busy. I've got to go, he said, pressing a quick kiss to Alyssa's cheek. See you tonight for dinner. She nodded, watching him grab his briefcase before heading out the door. As Jax made his way through the morning traffic, his phone buzzed with a text from his younger brother, Derek. Hey, bro, still on for lunch? Jax sighed, a mix of affection and frustration sweeping over him. Derek always seemed to need something, but he was family, and Jax felt that familiar sense of obligation. Sure, he texted back. Usual place at 12:30. The morning passed quickly, filled with meetings and calls. Before he knew it, Jax was sliding into a booth across from Derek at their favorite diner. Derek flashed his usual charismatic grin. How's the wedding planning going? He asked. Jax smiled in return. It's good, busy but good. Alyssa's got most of it under control. That's great, Derek replied, his eyes darting to his phone. Listen, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a bind. And there it was. Jax could feel his shoulders tighten as Derek launched into a long-winded tale about a missed sales quota and a possible eviction. It always came down to money with Derek. How much? Jax asked, cutting straight to the point. Derek had the decency to look sheepish. $2,000. Just until my next commission check comes in. I swear. Jax rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Derek, you're 30. When are you going to get your act together? I know, Derek said, holding up his hands. I'm working on it. This is the last time, I promise. It was a promise Jax had heard before, but family was family. So, he found himself reaching for his checkbook anyway. As he wrote the check, Jax missed the brief flash of guilt in Derek's eyes. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and wedding preparations. Before Jax knew it, the night of the engagement party had arrived. The backyard of his parents' suburban home had been transformed, twinkling lights strung between the trees and the smell of barbecue filling the air. Jax stood near the makeshift bar, watching Alyssa mingle with guests. She's quite a catch, his father Roy said, clapping him on the shoulder. You did good, son. Jax smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Thanks, Dad. His mother Carla bustled over, pulling him into a tight hug. Oh, my baby boy, all grown up and getting married. Mom, Jax protested, but there was no real annoyance in his voice. He loved his parents, even if they could be a bit overbearing sometimes. The night continued with laughter and congratulations. As the party began winding down, Derek clinked his glass, calling for attention. If I could have a moment, he said, his voice carrying across the yard. I'd like to say a few words about my big brother and his beautiful fiancée. Jax felt Alyssa tense beside him as Derek began to speak, but he was too caught up in the moment to notice. Jax has always been there for me, Derek continued, his voice thick with emotion. Through thick and thin, he's had my back. And now, he's found someone who complements him perfectly. He raised his glass towards Alyssa. To Jax and Alyssa, may your love only grow stronger with each passing day. The guests cheered, and Jax pulled Derek into a tight hug. Thanks, little brother, he whispered as they embraced. Jax missed the fleeting, loaded look exchanged between Derek and Alyssa. The following days were a whirlwind of final wedding preparations. Jax threw himself into work, eager to wrap up a major project before taking time off for the honeymoon. Late one night, close to midnight, Jax's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Curious, he opened it, only to have his world shatter. On the screen were photos and a video of Alyssa and Derek, tangled together in various states of undress. The timestamps showed they were recent, some from just days ago. Jax felt a wave of sickness wash over him as he scrolled through the images, each one driving the knife deeper into his heart. His hands trembled. He didn't sleep that night, his mind racing with questions and accusations. When morning came, he was waiting in the kitchen when Alyssa appeared, bleary-eyed and yawning. We need to talk, Jax said, his voice cold and flat. Alyssa froze, sensing the shift in his demeanor. What's wrong? Without a word, Jax slid his phone across the counter. Alyssa's face drained of color as she saw what was on the screen. Jax, I can explain, she began, but he cut her off. Explain what? How you've been sleeping with my brother? How you both lied to my face? It's not what it looks like, Alyssa pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. Those photos must be fake. Someone's trying to break us up. Jax laughed, the sound bitter and harsh. Don't insult my intelligence, Alyssa. I know what I'm looking at. The argument that followed was explosive, filled with accusations and raised voices. Eventually, Alyssa crumpled, sinking to the floor as sobs racked her body. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Jax stood over her, his anger giving way to a deep, aching pain. How long? He asked, his voice barely audible. Alyssa looked up, her makeup streaked down her face. 6 months, she admitted. The confession hit Jax like a physical blow. 6 months of lies and betrayal. There's more, Alyssa said, her voice trembling. I'm pregnant. Jax felt the room spin. He gripped the counter to steady himself. Is it mine? He asked, already knowing the answer. Alyssa shook her head. I don't know, she whispered. It could be yours or Derek's. In that moment, something inside Jax broke. The future he had imagined, the life he had been building, crumbled to dust. Get out, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Pack your things and get out of my house. Alyssa reached for him, but he recoiled from her touch. Jax, please, we're done, he stated with finality in his voice. The wedding is over, and I never want to see you again. As Alyssa fled to the bedroom in tears, Jax's thoughts shifted to Derek, his own brother. The betrayal stung deeply, leaving a wound that Jax wasn't sure would ever heal. With trembling hands, he dialed his parents' number. When his mother answered, he could barely speak. Mom, he stammered, I need to talk to Dad. It's about Derek. An hour later, Jax paced in his parents' living room like a trapped animal. The front door opened and Derek walked in. Jax saw red. What's the emergency? Derek's words were interrupted when Jax's fist collided with his jaw. You son of a... Jax snarled, grabbing Derek by the shirt and slamming him into the wall. How could you? Derek's shock gave way to a smug grin, even as blood dripped from his split lip. Bro, you can't blame me. Alyssa came on to me. She said she needed a real man. The taunt pushed Jax over the edge. His fists flew, beating Derek's face and body. She's carrying your child, he roared. My future. It took both Royce and Carla to pull Jax away from Derek. Derek crumpled to the floor, his face a mess of blood and bruises. Boys, stop this, Carla cried, her voice filled with panic. We're family. Royce stepped between his sons, his face pale. What on earth is happening here? Through gasps and sobs, the story came out. Carla collapsed onto the couch, while Royce stood in stunned silence. Jax, Royce finally said, his voice thick with disappointment. Violence is never the solution. We need to sit down and talk this through as a family. Jax stared at his father, disbelief in his eyes. Talk it through? Are you serious? Your brother made a mistake, Carla pleaded, but he's still family. We can work this out. Jax looked from his mother to his father, then to Derek, who was being tended to by Carla. The realization hit him hard. They were going to forgive Derek again, just like they always had. No, Jax said coldly, his voice final. Not this time. He's not my brother anymore, and if you choose him, then I don't have parents either. He turned and walked out, ignoring his mother's cries and his father's calls for him to come back. As Jax climbed into his car, a new emotion began to rise within him, pushing past the pain and betrayal. Rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. As he drove away from his childhood home, his mind raced. Who had sent those photos and videos? Why now, just weeks before the wedding? More importantly, what was he going to do about it? One thing was certain. Derek and Alyssa would pay for what they'd done, and whoever had exposed their affair. Well, Jax wasn't sure if he wanted to thank them or destroy them too. Either way, he was going to find out who it was and get his revenge. The North Carolina mountains loomed in Jax's rearview mirror as he drove into the small town he now called home. It had been 3 months since he'd left Atlanta, 3 months since his life had shattered. The rage that had brought him here had cooled to a simmering anger, but it still burned within him, fueling every move. Jax pulled into the driveway of the small cabin he rented. As he stepped out of the car, his phone buzzed. A missed call from his mother. He ignored it, just like all the others before it. Inside, Jax powered up his laptop and checked his work emails. The remote engineering contracts he'd taken on provided a steady income and, more importantly, the solitude he craved. No office politics, no small talk, no reminders of his old life. As he scrolled through his inbox, a new email caught his eye. The subject line read, Derek Morgan, confidential information. Jax's heart raced as he opened it. It contained detailed records of Derek's business transactions, including several deals that seemed suspiciously inflated. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. This was ammunition. A cold smile spread across Jax's face. "Got you, little brother," he muttered. Over the next few days, Jax carefully examined the information, confirming its authenticity. Once he was sure, he created an anonymous email account and sent a message to Derek's company's HR department and board of directors. His finger hovered over the send button. Was he really going to do this? Destroy his brother's career? The memory of Derek's smug face taunting him about Alyssa flashed in his mind. Without hesitation, Jax clicked send. The fallout was swift and devastating. Within a week, Jax learned through old contacts that Derek had been fired, his reputation destroyed. Jax allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. This was just the beginning. As the weeks passed, Jax's focus shifted. The question that had plagued him since that fateful night resurfaced. Who had sent him those photos and videos? He began obsessing over it, spending hours each night going through old contacts, cross-referencing numbers, and reaching out to former friends for leads. One evening, as Jax was going over his notes, a name jumped out at him. Maya Thompson, Derek's ex-girlfriend, the one he had dumped for Alyssa years ago. Could it be? Jax wondered aloud. He found Maya's contact information, and after a brief hesitation, sent her a message. "Maya, it's Jax Morgan. I know it's been a while, but I was hoping we could meet for coffee. There's something I'd like to discuss." To his surprise, Maya responded almost immediately. "Jax, it's been ages. Sure, I'd love to catch up. How about tomorrow at 2 p.m.? At the Bluebird Cafe?" The next day, Jax found himself sitting across from Maya at a quiet coffee shop. She looked much the same as he remembered. Dark hair, piercing eyes, and a smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. "So, Jax," Maya said, stirring her latte, "what brings you to this neck of the woods? Last I heard, you were getting married in Atlanta." Jax clenched his jaw. "Plans changed," he said curtly. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Oh, do tell." Jax studied her face, searching for any sign that she already knew the story. "It's a long, ugly tale," he said, "but I'm more interested in hearing what you've been up to." "Still in marketing?" Maya nodded. "Yep, just got promoted to executive level." She paused, a sly smile forming on her lips. "I heard about Derek's troubles. Such a shame." The casual way she mentioned it raised alarms in Jax's mind. He leaned forward, his voice low. "Maya, I have to ask, did you have any involvement in what happened?" Ma's smile grew wider, but she didn't give a direct response. Instead, she replied, "You know, Jax, there's an old saying. What goes around comes around. Derek made a lot of enemies over time, and it was only a matter of time before it caught up with him." A cold shiver ran down Jax's spine. The knowing look in Ma's eyes, the subtle smirk. She was aware of more than she was letting on. But before Jax could ask more, Ma swiftly shifted the conversation to less risky topics. As they went their separate ways, her words echoed in Jax's mind. He was more certain than ever that she was involved in some way, but he needed evidence. Back at his cabin, Jax's phone rang. It was Alyssa. He stared at the screen, his thumb poised over the decline button. After a moment's pause, he answered, "What do you want, Alyssa?" His tone was frosty. "Jax, please," Alyssa's voice was desperate. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I really need your help." Jax let out a bitter laugh. "My help? Are you serious? Please, just hear me out," Alyssa begged. "I'm in my 3rd trimester now, and Derek, he's completely abandoned me. I have nowhere else to turn." Jax felt a mix of anger, pity, and an unwelcome spark of concern. "What about the baby?" he asked despite himself. "And that's why I'm calling," Alyssa's voice cracked. "Jax, there's a chance the baby could be yours. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. We can take a paternity test. If it's your child, don't you want to know?" The possibility that the child could be his hadn't crossed Jax's mind before. He'd been so consumed by his anger and plans for revenge that he had pushed thoughts of the pregnancy aside. I need to think about this," Jax said finally. "I'll call you back." He hung up, his mind spinning as he tried to process this new information. Another piece of news came through his network. Derek had moved in with a wealthy socialite he met through his former job. He was already living off her money, showing no interest in taking responsibility for Alyssa or the baby. Jax's anger flared. Derek was still the same selfish, irresponsible person he had always been. But now, Jax had a new target for his revenge. Over the next few days, Jax gathered more information about Derek's new living situation. He discovered the socialite's name, Vivian Carilli, and her address in an upscale Atlanta neighborhood. An idea began to form in Jax's mind. He picked up his phone and dialed Derek's number. It went to voicemail. "Derek, it's Jax," he said, forcing his voice to sound conciliatory. "Look, I know things have been tough between us, but you're still my brother. I think it's time we talk and try to work things out. Call me when you get this." He hung up, a grim smile playing on his lips. The bait was set. Now, he just had to wait for Derek to take it. It didn't take long. The next day, Jax's phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, big brother." Derek's voice was cautious. "I got your message. Are you serious about talking?" Jax swallowed his disgust. "Yeah, I am. I've had some time to think and, well, we're family, right? Why don't we meet up, have a drink, and try to sort this mess out?" He could hear the relief in Derek's voice. "That sounds great, Jax. Really great. When and where?" "How about next Friday? There's a bar downtown called the Rusty Nail. Say 8 p.m.? "I'll be there," Derek said quickly. "And Jax, thanks for reaching out. It means a lot." As Jax ended the call, he felt a flicker of regret or guilt, but he quickly dismissed it. Derek had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. The week before the meeting dragged on. Jax spent his days working and his nights planning. He casually reached out to some of Derek's old colleagues and family friends, mentioning that he and Derek would be at the Rusty Nail on Friday night to try and patch things up. He knew the word would spread. Finally, Friday night arrived. Jax showed up at the bar early and secured a table with a clear view of the entrance. He sipped on a whiskey, his stomach a mix of anticipation and dread. At 8:05, Derek walked in. He looked thinner, Jax noticed, and there were dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, Jax felt a flicker of brotherly concern. Then he remembered why they were here, and his resolve solidified. "Derek," Jax said as Derek slid into the seat across from him, "it's good to see you." Jax nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He gestured to the bartender for another round. "So," Derek began, fidgeting with his napkin. "How have you been?" Jax took a deep breath. "Cut the small talk, Derek. We both know why we're here." Derek's face dropped. "Jax, I know I messed up badly, but I want to make things right. Tell me how I can fix this." Jax let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Fix this? You think you can fix this?" His voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. "You slept with my fiancée, Derek. You got her pregnant. You destroyed my life. And for what, a cheap thrill?" Derek's eyes widened as he realized this wasn't the peaceful reunion he had hoped for. "Jack, please, keep your voice down," Derek pleaded. But Jax was just getting started. He laid out every betrayal, every lie, every time Derek had let him down. As he spoke, he noticed familiar faces entering the bar. Derek's former colleagues and family friends, just as he had planned. "And now," Jax's voice dripped with contempt, "you're shacked up with some rich woman, mooching off her money while Alyssa struggles alone with your child. You're pathetic, Derek. You always have been." Derek stood up, his face flushed with shame and anger. "You set me up," he hissed. "You never wanted to make peace. You just wanted to humiliate me." "No, Derek," Jax said calmly. "You humiliated yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are." As Derek stormed out of the bar, Jax noticed the shocked and disgusted looks on the faces of the onlookers. By morning, Derek's reputation would be in ruins once again. The next day, Jax met Maya for coffee. This time, he was blunt. "It was you, wasn't it?" he asked, without preamble. "You sent me those photos and videos of Derek and Alyssa." Maya didn't deny it. Instead, she gave a cold, satisfied smile. "Derek ruined my life when he left me for Alyssa," she said. "I've been waiting years for the right moment to return the favor." Upon discovering their affair, I understood it was time. Jax experienced a strange blend of gratitude and discomfort. "Why didn't you tell me it was you earlier?" Maya shrugged. "I wanted to see how you'd handle the information I had." "I must say I'm impressed," Maya continued. "You've torn down Derek's life quite thoroughly." As they conversed, Jax realized that he and Maya shared a similar objective, making Derek pay for his actions. It was a cold kind of comfort, but comfort nonetheless. The weeks that followed felt like a blur. Jax got the paternity test results. The baby wasn't his. He severed all contact with Alyssa, blocking her number and email. Unemployed and recently single, Vivian had thrown him out after learning the full story. Jax seemed to be aimlessly bouncing from one failed plan to the next. He focused entirely on his work, taking on more demanding projects. He moved into a larger apartment in the city, slowly rebuilding his life on his own terms. One evening, standing in his new office, looking out over the city, Jax felt something he hadn't in months. Peace. The anger that had once consumed him was still there, but it no longer controlled him. He thought about Derek, Alyssa, and the baby, who would grow up amidst the chaos. For a brief moment, he felt a pang of regret for his scorched earth approach, but then he remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the years of cleaning up Derek's messes. No, he decided. He had done what was necessary. He had taken control of his life, refused to be a victim, and now, finally, he was free. As the sun set over the city, Jax smiled to himself. He had survived the betrayal, emerged stronger, and no one would ever hurt him like that again. Jax stared at his phone, Derek's name glaring back at him on the screen. 6 months had passed since their confrontation at the Rusty Nail. 6 months of silence, only interrupted by whispers of Derek's ongoing downfall. Jax clenched his jaw and hit the call button. Derek's voice crackled through the speaker, a mixture of exhaustion and surprise. "We need to talk," Jax said, his tone cold and emotionless. "In person. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. at the park near Mom and Dad's old house." I don't think," Derek began, but Jax cut him off, ending the call before Derek could protest. The next evening, Jax arrived at the park early, his body tense as he waited for Derek's arrival. As the sun began to set, Jax saw Derek approaching. His brother looked worn out, clothes rumpled and hair unkempt. "Hey," Derek greeted cautiously, keeping his distance. Jax didn't respond, instead locking eyes with him. "I want to know why. Why Alyssa? Why destroy everything?" Derek flinched at the directness. I don't know, Jax. It just happened." Jax scoffed. "Things don't just happen. You made a choice. Both of you did." "I'm sorry, Jax. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am truly sorry." Jax laughed bitterly. "You're right. It doesn't change a damn thing." He leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. "How's life treating you, Derek? Enjoying the consequences of your actions?" Derek slumped, his shoulders heavy. "I haven't seen Alyssa or the baby. I can't face it." "Typical," Jax sneered. "Always running from your responsibilities." "You're pathetic. What do you want from me?" Derek's voice cracked. "I've lost everything, my job, my reputation, my family." "I want you to suffer," Jax said coldly. "I want you to wake up every day knowing you destroyed the only people who ever truly cared about you. I want you to live with that guilt for the rest of your miserable life." Derek looked up, tears in his eyes. "Can't we move past this? We're still brothers." Jax cut him off. "We're not. You're dead to me, Derek. This is the last time you'll ever see me. Don't try to contact me again." With that, Jax stood up and walked away, leaving Derek alone on the bench. He felt no remorse, no pity, just cold satisfaction that justice had been served. The next morning, Jax met Maya for coffee. She examined his face as he sat down. "How did it go with Derek?" she asked. "How did you know about that?" Jax raised an eyebrow. Maya shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I have my ways." Jax leaned back and gave her a steady gaze. "It's time for the full truth." "Maya, why did you really send me those photos and videos?" Maya's smile faded. "You want the truth? Fine. I loved Derek. When he left me for Alyssa, it broke me. I spent years trying to piece myself back together, always wondering what she had that I didn't." She paused, her eyes hardening. "When I found out about their affair, I saw my chance for revenge. I knew if anyone could make Derek pay, it was you." "You used me," Jax said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Yes," Maya admitted. "But can you honestly say you regret knowing the truth?" Jax thought for a moment before responding. "No," he said finally. "But don't think that makes us friends. You're just as manipulative as Derek." Maya nodded, accepting his judgment. "Fair enough. What will you do now?" "Now move on," Jax said firmly. "Leave all of this behind." In the following weeks, Jax poured himself into his work with renewed focus. He took on more challenging projects, pushing himself to new limits. His colleagues took notice, commenting on his sharp focus and increased productivity. One evening, while finishing up a complex design, his phone rang from an unknown number. "Oh, hello?" "Jax, it's Alyssa." Jax's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to let you know the baby was born last week, a girl. I named her Lily." "Why are you telling me this?" Jax asked coldly. Because," Alyssa's voice trembled, "even after everything, you deserve to know. And I'm sorry, Jax. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know how sorry I am." "You're right," Jax replied, his tone unchanged. It doesn't change anything. Don't contact me again, Alyssa. Ever. He ended the call, feeling nothing but a dull ache in his chest where his heart used to be. The next day, Jax made a decision. He accepted a job offer from a renowned engineering firm in Seattle. It was time for a fresh start, far away from the ghosts of his past. On his last night in Atlanta, Jack stood in his empty apartment, gazing out over the city skyline. He thought about the past year, the betrayal, the anger, the revenge. He had allowed it to define him, to shape him into someone harder, colder. But he had no regrets. The world had revealed its true nature, and he had adapted. His phone buzzed with a message from Maya. "Heard you're leaving town? Drinks to celebrate?" Jax typed a response, "No. Goodbye, Maya." He hit send and powered off his phone. As he locked the door to his apartment for the last time, Jax felt a grim satisfaction. He had survived the betrayal, emerged stronger. He walked out of the building and into the warm Atlanta night, ready for whatever came next. The past was dead, the future uncertain, but one thing was clear. Jax Morgan would never let anyone close enough to hurt him again. He climbed into his car, casting one final glance at the city that had once been his home, the place where he had lost everything and found a new version of himself. Without a trace of remorse or nostalgia, he started the engine and drove away, leaving behind the ruins of his old life and the people who had destroyed it. In the end, Jax realized that forgiveness was overrated. It was the refusal to forget, the unwavering determination to move forward without looking back, that truly set him free. And he decided that was victory enough.